ringrazio intanto per l'invito e mi dispiace di non poter essere con voi in presenza. Ho ascoltato solo la lezione precedente che mi ha interessato molto e mi dispiace di non poter partecipare alle altre sedute. Comunque è già tanto poter essere presente con voi e avere la possibilità di condividere quanto il mio gruppo di ricerca ha fatto negli ultimi 4-5 anni, anche prima che uscisse ChatGPT, per vedere come le intelligenze artificiali possono essere combinate in modo complementare con l'attività degli umani di buona volontà. Uno degli esempi specifici che abbiamo e che ho portato oggi è quello del confronto tra i manoscritti miniati medievali e l'intelligenza artificiale generativa. Questo non per dimostrare delle tesi, ma per condividere con voi delle riflessioni pratiche che si sono sviluppate durante l'opera. Quello che abbiamo visto è che i processi mentali del miniatore nel Medioevo non sono molto diversi dai processi dell'intelligenza artificiale generativa. Entrambi si basano sui pregiudizi delle loro basi di dati, come peraltro fa anche tutta la nostra disciplina umanistica. Ora avevo preparato dei materiali per voi, visto che non sapevo se potevo essere in presenza, se potevo anche partecipare visivamente, e ho preparato dei materiali per condividere con voi dei materiali visuali. Il primo è brevissimo e vi spiega l'iniziativa internazionale Engineering Historical Memory che adesso ha costituito la commissione interna del Comitato internazionale di scienze storiche per quanto riguarda le scienze computazionali e la storia. E adesso parte. Il prodotto che vedete è generato da intelligenza artificiale.
And history is no exception to this paradigm shift. However, it is crucial to recognize that computationally intensive technologies such as data mining, machine learning, computer vision, and natural language processing algorithms must be crafted explicitly for historical sciences. As a result, traditional scholarship encounters challenges when transitioning bookish knowledge into the digital realm without diluting its content or value. To address this dilemma, the Engineering Historical Memory (EHM) initiative adopts a comprehensive threefold approach comprising an international research community of approximately 130 scholars and software engineers. Firstly, the initiative involves the analysis of critical tools such as information visualization, image-to-image search, sentiment analysis, text-to-image modeling, and knowledge aggregation. This entails thoroughly reviewing best web practices in digital history and developing novel algorithms explicitly tailored for scholars. Secondly, the initiative extends invitations to scholars and cultural institutions to pass and share established bookish knowledge derived from various primary historical sources, including text, images, and music. These contributions are organized into machine-understandable databases, serving as a testing ground to refine and enhance the algorithms developed by the EHM initiative. Lastly, the initiative instructs software engineers to translate these static databases into dynamic web-based applications. These applications aggregate diverse historical knowledge and offer real-time updates on publications, images, and videos related to selected historical items, opening new discovery horizons. Support engineering historical memory for free access to primary historical sources.
A parte questo video avete due QR code sulla sinistra del video, uno che dà accesso alla piattaforma web e l'altro che dà accesso libero e gratuito al volume pubblicato da Routledge sulla stessa procedura. Questa è la stessa parte testuale che è stata elaborata dall'algoritmo. Come avrete visto, non sono io che parlavo, ma è un mio avatar. che parla dipendentemente dalle udienze in diverse lingue ed estrae i materiali dai miei testi a seconda delle necessità. Quello che ho preparato per voi oggi è il resoconto di come abbiamo confrontato i manoscritti medievali miniati poliani con quanto l'intelligenza artificiale ha generato. Il gruppo di lavoro è abbastanza ampio, tra Pechino, Singapore, Canton e Venezia, e faccio partire subito. Anche questo è tutto generato da intelligenza artificiale.
This video demonstrates how traditional scholarship, media art, and AI can be integrated to enhance visual knowledge discovery, transmission, and creation. As a case study, we compared text-to-image translation in Renaissance illuminated manuscripts and AI-generated technology, using Marco Polo's description of the world. We'd like to begin by offering you some contextual information about Marco Polo's book. The famed book titled The Description of the World was co-authored by Marco Polo and Rustichello da Pisa when they were held captive in Palace of St. George in Genoa. Marco Polo was released in 1299 after the Treaty of Milan. It was during this captivity that Marco Polo met the famous writer Rustichello da Pisa. In Genoa, they collaborated on a literary work based on Marco Polo's experience. This work greatly improved Europe's understanding of the East. Prior knowledge of Asia was primarily based on ancient Greek and Latin sources, reconciled with teachings from the Old and New Testaments. Many manuscript copies of Marco Polo's book have survived, indicating its great success during its time. While the original manuscript was written in French, the existing copies cover a variety of Western European languages, including Latin and Italian vernaculars, which are considered the most important, as illustrated in the Stemma Codicum by Eugenio Burgio, professor at Ca' Foscari, University of Venice. The website Engineering Historical Memory, EHM, provides access to primary historical sources. On this platform, the Franco-Venetian version of Marco Polo's book has been parsed and mapped, using the edition with English translation by Eugenio Burgio and Samuele Simeon. The web application now includes geolocation of place names, indexing of notable things, and a link to digital images of the Franco-Venetian manuscript held in the National Library of France. As discussed, the narratives of Marco Polo's experiences became a text with the help of Rustichello da Pisa at the end of the 13th century. During the 15th and 16th centuries, famous artists used their skills and knowledge to visualize Marco Polo's narratives and depict them in 4 large and splendid illuminated manuscripts, standing out from a number of other more modest pictorial programs. According to Deborah Higgs Strickland, professor at the University of Glasgow, images in illuminated manuscripts do not simply reflect the texts they accompany, but may complement, contradict, augment, diminish, or even ignore them. In addition, the responsibility of conceiving and executing the text-to-image relationship lies in the hands of not only the medieval artists, but also the authors, patrons agents, and/or a combination of these. Today, we challenged AI generative software in a similar process, which relies on contextual data to interpret text and generate images. Let's explore this further. In the last few years, there has been a significant advancement in artificial neural networks for automatic image generation. This new generation of diffusion models like DALL-E and Midjourney has surpassed previous techniques based on variational autoencoders and generative adversarial networks. These models can now accept users' instructions and create images that are either photorealistic or in various artistic styles. To explore this pioneering field of knowledge, Dr. Andrea Nanetti, Distinguished Professor of Digital Humanities at the Guangzhou Academy of Fine Arts, in collaboration with Professor Li Boyang, who works on computational narrative intelligence, multimodal machine learning, and generative AI at Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, led a project in which students integrated traditional scholarship, media art, and AI to visualize Marco Polo's text in the course titled Visualization of Cultural Heritage, sponsored by the NTU President's Office COIL grant. Drawing upon insights from the course, this video presents 4 notable examples, all of which are indigenous to Asia: the Lugu Bridge, the Southeast Asian Rhino, the Mongolian Paisas, and the palaces of the Yuan dynasty. For each, we highlight Marco Polo's description, along with the corresponding visual depictions found in medieval manuscripts and the contemporary interpretations generated by AI. Today's Lugu Bridge in Beijing once amazed Marco Polo over 700 years ago, who called it the most beautiful bridge in the world. The Lugu Bridge, initially constructed in the 12th century, has undergone multiple consolidation, renovation, and conservation works that may have altered its appearance. The way in which Westerners depicted Chinese bridges was influenced by their regional knowledge of bridges. Renaissance illuminated manuscripts record how artists interpreted the descriptions of Marco Polo in the 15th and 16th centuries. These manuscripts often showcase bridges as simple arches with minimal decorations. Marco Polo's description of Hangzhou, referred to the book's EHM paragraph 151, states that
the city of Xingzai is about 100 miles in circumference, and it has 12,000 bridges built of stone, for the most part so lofty that a great fleet could pass beneath them, and smaller boats can pass under any of the other bridges. No one should be surprised that there are so many bridges, because I can tell you that the entire city rises from the water and is surrounded by water, making it necessary to have many bridges so that people can get to all the different parts of town.
the description of Suzhou, referred to the book's EHM paragraph 150, reports Marco Polo saying,
I tell you in all truth that in this city there are quite 6,000 stone bridges, under the greater part of which one galley or two could well pass.
During the 1450s, a renowned Italian cartographer named Fra Mauro crafted a world map that included approximately 3,000 geo-ethnographical elements and numerous visual representations of cities, ships, animals, architectural monuments, mountains, roads, and rivers. Fra Mauro's map also featured a portrayal of China that relied heavily on Marco Polo's book, which included an illustration of the Lugu Bridge. The bridge was depicted with meticulous attention to detail, accurately aligning with Marco Polo's account of the parapet and ornamental columns. Even though Marco Polo mentioned 24 arches in his description, the map only displays 11 arches. Interestingly, this number matches up with other sources from the 15th to 17th century, which also mention either 11 or 13 arches. One of these sources is a Yuan dynasty painting called Rafts at the Lugu Bridge. It's worth noting that the current bridge also has 11 arches. Today, we tested Midjourney's ability to depict the Lugu Bridge using Marco Polo's text. Different textual prompts produce varied visual results. While Marco Polo's text prompts all AI-generated images, not all textual details are accurately represented. For example, AI-generated images either miss the lions decorating the bridge or introduce Western-style lions and other animals. We compared how AI and Renaissance artists interpret text into images. Interestingly and obviously, they both added, subtracted, or altered information based on their knowledge repositories. On his return journey from China to Venice, Marco Polo called by today's Sumatra, the description of the world records Marco Polo's encounter with the legendary unicorns. Indeed, the description of the animal recalls today's Sumatran rhinoceros. During the 15th and 16th centuries, Renaissance artists depicted the animals described by Marco Polo in illuminated manuscripts. However, their visual interpretations were based more on the knowledge and culture of their time, rather than the actual written descriptions. He said,
The island has wild elephants and plenty of unicorns, which are scarcely smaller than an elephant. The unicorn has the hair of a buffalo, and feet like an elephant's. In the middle of its forehead is a single horn, very thick and black. I assure you it does no harm with its horn, but only with its tongue and knees, for it has long, sharp spines on its tongue. It has a head like a wild boar's, and always holds it bowed towards the ground. It is perfectly content to wallow in mud and mire. It is a very ugly beast to look at. It is nothing like the animal we talk of and describe in our parts, where we say that it lets itself be caught by a virgin. In fact, I can tell you it is the exact opposite of what we believe it to be.
A few centuries later, Western science's first drawing of the Sumatran rhinoceros was published by the Royal Society of London in 1793. During an experiment with generative AI, Professor Nanetti's students at NTU Singapore disregarded their preconceived notions of what a rhinoceros should look like, and instead focused solely on Marco Polo's account of the animal. They broke down the description into specific sections, used them as textual prompts, and generated AI images using multiple software including Hotpot, Imagen, DALL-E, and Midjourney. Then, they collaged these images' details of different body parts to visualize Marco Polo's description. Certainly, these AI-generated collaged visual representations are nowhere close to the Sumatran rhinoceros. However, the process of setting aside our knowledge about rhinoceros allows us to empathize with the Renaissance artists, who illuminated manuscripts with no prior understanding of this Southeast Asian creature. In Marco Polo's description of the world, he mentions paisas in several places. Paisas were metal badges that were carried by high-ranking officials and nobles in the Mongol Empire. They were used to demand goods and services from the civilian population. When the Polos were getting ready to leave China, they received paisas from the Great Khan. On their way back, other authorities also gave them paisas. The medieval illuminated manuscripts provide insight into how artists interpreted these artifacts. Professor Strickland argued that in order to meet the expectations of the aristocratic patrons, the artists had to translate concepts unfamiliar to Western readers into visual forms, in such a way that retained narrative coherence as well as high entertainment value. Professor Nanetti's students experimented AI to create 3D models of paisas based on Marco Polo's text. According to Marco Polo, some of the tablets bore the portrait of a gerfalcon, or the head of a lion, and were all inscribed with these words: "By the might of the great God and of the great grace he has granted to our emperor, blessed be the name of the Khan, and death and destruction to all those who do not obey him." Students first tested CornLP, Pop AI, and Google Bard to summarize and annotate primary and secondary literature, to understand the measurements of paisas, including its weight, size, materials, and designs. However, effective information organization in visual flowcharts or diagrams still requires traditional scholarship methods. Subsequently, the NTU students prepared sketches of paisas based on existing paisas from museum collections and AI-generated images using OpenAI, DALL-E, and Midjourney. Finally, they recreated the 3D models of paisas on the animation software Maya, offering a potential visual representation of the Mongol passport in Marco Polo's time. This research process combined traditional methodologies with AI-powered tools for the study of historical artifacts. While traditional scholarship remains essential, AI can serve as a source of new insights and discussion for the advancement of learning. In his book, Marco Polo provided a detailed account of the palaces in the Yuan capitals Dadu and Chengdu. He described the grandeur and magnificence of these palaces in great detail. When talking about the palace in Dadu, today's Beijing, Marco Polo mentioned that it was the most prominent palace he had ever seen. The walls of the rooms and chambers were entirely covered with gold and silver and were decorated with relief pictures of dragons, birds, knights, scenes of battle, and many different types of beasts. The ceiling was similarly fashioned with gold and pictures. The hall was so large that more than 6,000 men could easily eat there. The roofs were a blaze of scarlet, green, blue, yellow, and every other color. They were so beautifully and skillfully varnished that they shimmered like crystal, and their gleam could be seen from far away. During the 15th century, Illuminated manuscripts depicted these palaces in a European style based on Marco Polo's account and the artist's knowledge and experiences. Fra Amauro's map follows similar visual patterns, depicting the palaces in distinct Renaissance style, seen especially in the proportions of the classical columns, cylindrical towers, and semicircular arches. While there are hardly any remains of the Yuan palaces today, one may find a visual representation in the 13th century Chinese painting, Episodes from the Career of a Yuan Official. It portrays the city gate of Dadu, with high walls and a massive entrance with 5 gates, aligning features of the city gate as recorded in Chuogeng of the Ming Dynasty. Moreover, accounts of this grand entrance with 5 gates can also be found in Marco Polo's Description of the World. NTU students picked up keywords from Marco Polo's description of the palaces and used them as textual prompts for Dream Studio to generate images. The experiment also involved using Photoshop AI to expand the canvas and to clean up certain details, like crooked walls, missing pillars, or non-realistic areas. Students conducted a comprehensive study of the architectural styles of the Yuan dynasty by reviewing literature and conducting iconographic research. Subsequently, they created 3D models of the imperial palaces and gardens, which can be explored from a first-person perspective using mobile devices. This was made possible by the Live Link feature of Unreal Engine. This case study shows how, in the absence of still-standing Yuan palaces, digital reconstructions benefit from a combination of sources, including ancient literature and visual materials, archaeological evidence, and more recently, AI and computer technologies. Renaissance artists took creative liberties in illuminating Marco Polo's book, especially with unfamiliar concepts. AI seems to act similarly. Just like humans, generative AI can only produce outputs based on what it has learned from its training data and the information it has access to. We demonstrated that blending traditional approaches with generative AI opens new possibilities for historical sciences. Moreover, this exploratory research has raised numerous questions that need to be addressed. How can we improve generative AI to capture the complex details that are often overlooked? Moreover, how can AI visualizations integrate more textual, visual, and archaeological evidence? Please stay tuned to EHM for further discussions on this topic.
Bene.
Quindi, per arrivare alle conclusioni, questi sono i QR code se volete accedere a tutti questi materiali che sono visibili online. Per riassumere il processo di lavoro, siamo partiti da una lettura attenta del testo poliano. Quindi siamo andati a guardare come i manoscritti medievali hanno miniato i singoli paragrafi e abbiamo confrontato la miniatura, cioè il passaggio dal testo all'immagine fatto dall'artista con quanto fanno i software oggi. Abbiamo messo insieme le due cose e questo è servito per generare un processo nuovo di approccio e di critica al testo poliano. Sempre stando sui video, per concludere, un fattore che ci ha interessato molto è stato il processo di validazione del contenuto visivo. Siamo tutti consapevoli che la validazione nella conoscenza tradizionale libresca è basata sulle note e sui riferimenti che la buona volontà degli autori fanno a quello che hanno visto. Per i video questo manca completamente, quindi siamo andati a creare una customizzazione in OpenAI appena l'ha permessa. ChatGPT ha permesso la customizzazione dal novembre del 2023. Abbiamo iniziato da dicembre a confrontarci su come si poteva andare ad interagire con l'algoritmo principale per chiedergli di processare delle metodologie specifiche. Su questo esempio siamo andati a tarare la visualizzazione dei video che parlavano di Marco Polo. Abbiamo creato una customizzazione che scarica il testo del video, lo traduce in materiale leggibile e per ogni paragrafo vengono creati degli algoritmi specifici che vanno a fare dei match sulle fonti disponibili in repositories come Taylor and Francis o Google Scholar o JSTOR oppure altri per confrontare quanto viene detto nel video corrisponda ad informazione provata. Questo algoritmo è disponibile gratuitamente su ChatGPT e potete accedervi anche senza abbonamenti. La base, e questo per concludere, è il lavoro di customizzazione dell'algoritmo non è stato fatto partendo da principi ingegneristici, ma è stato fatto partendo da un metodo sviluppato precedentemente per analizzare idee complesse. Dopodiché è stato trasformato questo metodo in un processo gestibile da una macchina. Questo è scritto molto in piccolo, però se avete la registrazione c'è e vi do dopo il riferimento ad un articolo che il gruppo di lavoro ha pubblicato qualche mese fa su tutto quello che vi ho detto oggi. Questa è la reference per il lavoro. Come avete visto anche dal video, questo articolo ne rende chiaro, il gruppo di lavoro che chiudo qui è un gruppo abbastanza vasto che lavora su diversi paesi e abbiamo avuto l'onore di essere pubblicati sulla History of Historiography, una rivista italiana di fascia A, che è uscita lo scorso settembre. Ringrazio intanto quelli che hanno permesso questi lavori, prima di tutto l'Accademia di Belle Arti di Guangzhou e il Fondo delle Scienze Sociali e anche il Ministero dell'Istruzione di Singapore e l'Ufficio della Presidenza di NTU che ha supportato questo progetto di transizione delle possibilità dell'intelligenza artificiale in una didattica pratica e sperimentale. Vi ringrazio molto.